Hi, my name is Mark, and this is the first of my novels. It's called Only in Florida, Mosquito Lagoon. Today, I'd like to read a passage from this book, and it's the wake passage. It's very important because most of the characters who have sustaining roles throughout the rest of the novel are at this wake for Dr. Johnson. A little background first. Mike Lyman is a nurse, and it's through his eyes that this story is told. He works in a rehab, Harbor City Health and Rehab, and on a Friday afternoon, he admits Mrs. Rollins into the service for rehabilitation of a badly fractured lower leg. Mrs. Rollins hurt her leg in a fall on a Spoils Island in the southern part of the county in the Indian River. On Monday morning, Mrs. Rollins is found dead on the floor outside of the rehab gym. She is lying in a pool of her own blood, and it is felt that she fell, hit her head, and died as a result of that fall. Before he leaves work that day, Mike looks through the woman's personal effects and, among other things, finds a photograph that is somewhat familiar to him. He keeps the photograph, and over the course of the next couple of days, it occurs to him where this place is. It is on one of the Spoils Islands that he used to visit by boat for recreation purposes, and he hopes to go back to that island to refresh his memory and kind of as a tribute to Mrs. Rollins, a place that they shared. On Friday, 1 week after Mrs. Rollins' death, Daniel Johnson, MD, is found dead floating in the Indian River very near this same island, dead of an apparent boating accident. So now Mike is really interested in going because Dr. Johnson is the man who actually admitted Mrs. Rollins into the Harbor City. On this island, Mike finds four small pieces of notebook paper like you might be able to carry in your shirt pocket. On these pages, one letter each, are the letters D, N, N, and Y. The doctor's name is Daniel. His son's name is Danny. The other thing that he finds on this island is a large pond where he's used to see water birds nesting. Today, there are no live birds, only a few floating on the surface of the water, dead. And several animals also came up to the water's edge, appeared for a drink, and fell over dead themselves. This all seems very strange to Mike, so he heads home. And when he gets there, sitting in his driveway is a large sedan, and in the sedan are two FBI agents who quickly whisk him off to the local police station. When he gets there, he finds out that Mrs. Rollins' death was a murder. And since he was at the facility at approximately the same time, he is considered a suspect. They really have no direct evidence of his involvement, so he's released. When he gets home, a phone call from his boss tells him that he has been suspended from his job pending the outcome of the investigation because the FBI does indeed consider him a suspect. He reads the paper that evening and discovers that Daniel Johnson will have his wake the next morning at 10 a.m., and Mike plans to attend. This is the wake passage. At least twice before, I had attended services at Whispering Winds, not a luxurious chapel, but it did have a large capacity as needed for someone of Dr. Johnson's prominence. We had only met once, but when a person's life has such meaning to the community and the citizens individually, I carry a breast pocket full of tissues to their funeral. I was planning for a look at his son Daniel, aka Danny, aka DNNY, at the service, and wondered if seeing his face would cause me to well up. If he had something to do with this tragedy, and I got to feel for his complicity, there would be little need for tissues. I arrived at the chapel a half hour early to avoid being seen by any of the many medical people that I know in this small community. After all, I was vanquished from my position and certainly thought by most to be guilty of something. There were only a few people in the lobby of the chapel when I arrived, and I signed the guest register as Harrison Ford, the only name that popped into my head as I stood there, pen in hand. It would look a little funny for me to twiddle that pen as I searched for a suitable pseudonym. Those inside the main hall were all near the front, maybe 20 of them. They acted like family and close friends, holding each other and hugging at every opportunity. I took a seat along the left aisle fairly close to the front so I could get a good look at the principals. The service bulletin had a photo of Dr. Johnson in a formal pose, looking about 60, but with a hair he probably hadn't seen since he was 50. The back page had the words "To Amazing Grace," and inside left were his impressive life accomplishments. Inside right was the schedule of songs and prayers and eulogies, including the last to be delivered by Daniel Johnson II. People quickly arrived and filled in the chapel more than halfway. Once the area around me filled in, I felt more comfortable looking around the room. Several doctors with whom I was acquainted entered and took their seats. Dr. Plinsky, my best doctor friend, came in with one of his nurse practitioners at his side. Far in the rear, on the right side, away from my position, was Special Agent Mason of the FBI and the unnamed agent who had rousted me from home 2 days earlier. They sat in an uncrowded area of the back and whispered constantly to each other. Just before 10:30, who should walk in accompanied by Detective Stark Raving Mad, but the very beautiful suspended homicide detective Natalie Bruce, wearing a black shoulder-length wig and large sunglasses. My double take caused her to see me, and she immediately stuck out her tongue, in a cute way that made me want to see it again. I turned back to the front. Some sort of minister said a few words, none of which I remembered, and none in the Baptist tones that Florida wakes are known for. A curtain was opened behind the speaker and revealed a poster of the same photo as was on the bulletin. The minister ended his remarks by saying that at the conclusion of this service, the ashes of Dr. Johnson would be interred at Mosquito Lagoon Cemetery, and that he would say a few more words at that time. A very well-dressed college friend of the doctor was next and reflected on the strong character and work ethic of Dan. He gave way to Dr. Plinsky, who spoke in glowing terms of his friend, with whom he had worked for many years, establishing protocols for one disease or another, specifying AIDS as a hallmark disease in their history. Dr. P was always able to make his point and speak in a completely heartfelt manner. When he finished, I felt like applause would be appropriate. The minister then returned to the dais and asked if anyone else would like to say anything about Dr. Johnson. A man near the back, about Dr. Johnson's age, stood up and said loudly that he would. He walked slowly down the center aisle. This was a man who had not worn a suit for a long time, maybe never before, and seemed miscast as a close friend of someone as high in the social strata as Dr. Johnson. I turned for a glance at Dan Jr., who looked peeved at this old nobody wanting to speak at his father's wake. The man appeared to be the stereotypical Florida cracker with his mullet haircut and a couple of days' growth on his face. You could hear embarrassed whispers from several corners of the room as he neared the front. He didn't stand behind the dais, but stopped between the frontmost pews and turned to the congregation. "I'm Jim Frank," he began. "I've known Dan Johnson for almost 20 years, and I've called him my friend since the first day I met him and your mother." At which time he looked directly at Dan Jr., who did not look up. "For that whole time he kept his boat in the slip next to mine." At that mention, a hush came over the crowd, and everyone craned their necks to see better, except the son, who sat with his head down. "The last funeral I went to was for Brenda, his wife, and the light of his life. The cancer got her way too soon, and Dan was crushed that there was nothing he could do to save her. I go out every day crabbing or shrimping or fishing. Not Dr. Dan, though. Since the missus died, he didn't go out at all. He would just come to the marina and play the same songs on his record player and work on the boat, shining it up and keeping it in good working order, just like Brenda was coming back. He'd polish that boat just the way he did when she was alive and tune it up and change out the dock lines. After the hurricanes, he'd be the first one back to the slip, make sure there was no damage to her precious boat. When we first met, the boat was called Morning Breeze. After Brendy passed, he wanted to change the name to Brenda Sue too, after Brendy. I told him it was bad luck to change the name of a vessel, but he said he could no longer be hurt by bad luck. I guess he was right about that for all them years, but now I guess the luck run out. When his boat was gone last Friday morning, I thought it was stole. I called the doc on the cell phone, but he said he was all right and he'd be back in a while. I scratched my head for a while over that one, but I figured he was just missing Brendy a lot that day. A very dark cloud rose over the shrimp house that afternoon, and I knew there was something wrong, bad wrong. I told the missus there was something bad out there, but she said the doc probably just got into some redfish in the river. She don't know. She don't even eat fish. She probably only said that so I'd shut up. The man appeared to be closing, but had to wipe his eyes on his coat sleeve first. Dan Johnson was the best friend I ever had that didn't go out, and me and the missus will miss having him around. Thank you. As the man slowly walked back up the aisle, for the first time in my eulogy experience, there was absolute silence. I had to use a tissue from my pocket. In a minute, the last speaker, Danny Johnson, went to the dais and delivered carefully rehearsed remarks, as warm as if he were ordering meat. He looked around the room and our eyes met, and he paused and stumbled over the next words that I didn't even hear. I knew he recognized me, and I knew he knew I recognized him, the man who pretended to be Mrs. Rollins' husband that day when she was admitted to Harbor City. He gave me a look that was chilling. As soon as his remarks were finished, I beat it up the side aisle, past Officers Bruce and Stark, got in my car, and drove home. I got what I wanted at the wake. I just didn't know yet what to do with it. Thank you.